Will Steve Rogers be willing to risk it all to save the frozen head of his old friend Tony Stark? Well, let's hop into the pages of Avengers Twilight issue number 3 and find out together, shall we? So then, picking up in the fallout of the last issue, the head of the Thunderbolts is positively reaming out Bullseye's daughter for refusing to take the shot on Steve in the last issue. As far as she's concerned, he was unarmed and undangerous, only for the sergeant to once again positively tear into her, saying, "Do you have any idea who that is? That's Captain America. He's a walking WMD. But worse still, he's got a head of ideas, dangerous ideas that could upend the world as we know it." And it's true, Captain America does indeed have all sorts of dangerous ideas, like going alone to rescue Tony Stark's frozen head from where it's currently being held at the raft. The way Steve sees it, Luke Cage and his defenders have their hearts in the right place, but they're either too young, too old, or too untrained, and he doesn't want to risk any lives unnecessarily. However, Tyler, the defender's nice young tech expert, actually does manage to warm his way up to Steve just enough to be brought along for the ride. After all, Steve's heart might be in the right place, but he's still an old man in a dark dystopian future, and we can't expect him, just like we can't expect any of our grandparents, to know how to work technology. Now, how does our unlikely duo choose to make it to the raft? Well, this is the best part. Steve actually manages to unearth an old Quinjet in one of Tony Stark's now defunct properties. The tech might be out of date by modern standards, but that was always one of the great things about Tony Stark. He was a futurist. He was always getting ideas that stood the test of time, almost as if they came from the future. This is of course why New S.H.I.E.L.D. and the evil powers that be have gone out of their way to keep Tony Stark's head alive so they can continue to pilfer his brain for ideas. While sneaking inside, Steve monologues to himself about how back in the day the raft was where the Avengers and the other heroes kept some of their most dangerous villains, the ones they couldn't let walk free or go to regular prison. Now though, in this dark future, supervillains and criminals are executed, meaning that all the extra space in this old prison now houses some of the most horrifying science experiments conducted by the new evil regime. Cap would love nothing more than to shut them down. But unfortunately, this is war, a losing war, and he already has an objective: get Tony Stark's head and get out of there. Only here's the thing, Steve's actually not alone when he actually manages to reach the freezing chamber. Turns out Bullseye's daughter had actually figured out that there was probably a good chance Steve would try and spring his old friend, and as such she set a trap for him in plans of killing him and earning back her honor. But once again though, when push comes to shove, she just can't bring herself to pull the trigger, almost as if Steve Rogers' words that didn't resonate with anyone at the end of the last issue actually did manage to resonate with her. Steve even talks to her very respectfully, soldier to soldier, saying that, you know, it's not our job to reason why, it's our job to do and die, but that's a lot easier to do when you don't know you're being lied to. This conversation ends up going on a little longer than it should, because at that moment, James Stark ends up making the scene, and oh, is he pissed to see his old Uncle Steve trying to steal his dad's head. We actually end up getting a lot of really interesting depth to Jimmy Stark as a character in this issue. Obviously, he's mad at Cap for trying to ruin his plans, but he speaks with so much more repressed anger about Cap and by extension his parents, saying that by taking over the world, he's done what they as the Avengers never could. He's keeping people safe, fed, entertained. Oh sure, some people die or go to prison forever, oftentimes both, but you know what, that's a small price to pay for peace, right? Cap, always the idealist, ends up firing back at Jimmy, saying essentially that he never saved the world, never actually created peace, he just made a nicer, comfier cage for humanity to spend its days in. It's at that point Bullseye actually ends up shocking everyone by shooting Jimmy and officially joining Cap's side. Steve is quick to say, man, you know, you're pretty damn good with that bow, and also with this mood lighting making you appear purple. You might call yourself Bullseye, but damn if you're not a Hawkeye to me right now. Which of course begs the question, hey, whatever happened to Kate Bishop? Also, hey, did Clint never have kids in this dark future? Who's to say? Our new fast friends make their way for the door with Tony's head in tow, and they almost make it too before they end up getting met at the pass by Jimmy sporting his brand new Iron Man armor that he built himself. Even though in the last issue he talked about how much he hated the armor both conceptually and as a symbol of his parents. Though, let's just say that mood ends up changing pretty quickly as this guy ends up getting super addicted right out of the gate to the power of being an Iron Man. And I mean, substance dependency does run in his family, so it only makes sense. It's after that we're treated to a very cool, very creative little action scene, wherein Cap and the new Hawkeye must team up to try and save Tyler, who very bravely tried to ram this evil Iron Man with the Quinjet. They accomplish this by shooting out the window so Captain America can swoop on in and save the kid. Again, it's really well constructed and perfectly drawn. All of this action and commotion, though, basically means that the raft is sinking right now, meaning our heroes not only have to contend with evil Jimmy over here, but they also have to contend with the island itself. All the while, Stark Jr. never shuts up, continuing to berate his Uncle Steve, and he still very much calls him Uncle Steve, saying that he's the past, that his way never worked, but Jimmy is the future, and he's going to do what the Avengers and his parents never could, even if it kills him. Steve, always quick with a retort, is sure to say that despite what everyone out there may be thinking, Captain America was always fighting for a better future, even as a man out of time. And hey, you know what? That future actually ends up coming to save him, as it seems that Miss Marvel Kamala Khan took Steve's words to heart last issue and has rejoined the fight. She manages to embiggen into kaiju size and save Bullseye and Tyler and anyone else who may have drowned on the raft. Sadly, it's not time to celebrate just yet, as Jimmy Stark continues to whoop the ever-loving crap out of poor Captain America, who's doing everything he can to keep his old bones upright. It's at moments like this, though, when all seems lost and Steve's back is against the wall, he does what he always does in this situation, and that is say a little prayer. Oh, no, not to any of the gods you might be thinking of. Instead, Steve opts to pray to an old friend, Thor the God of Thunder, who ends up calling down a massive bolt out of the blue to punish Jimmy, before welcoming his old friend Cap, saying, "Is now finally the time to assemble." And so that was Avengers Twilight issue number 3, everybody, and overall I thought this was another really strong offering from Chip Zdarsky. I think the story's really starting to hit its stride right now. I love how everything is coming together. I love the extra depth and complexity they've actually given to Jimmy Stark, who I was afraid was going to be a one-note villain. And yet here he actually ends up being a really great representation of how these dark dystopian worlds come to be, and that is people get complacent, they get too comfortable. They sacrifice liberty for security. Really loving Kamala Khan's new costume here as Miss Marvel, though I do think it's kind of funny that she's all over the cover and yet she's only maybe in one panel of the actual book. Was really not expecting them to remix Hawkeye the way they did, but I do love the idea that Cap is just so good and so inspiring that Bullseye can actually end up turning to the good side. It's just really great superhero stuff, and if this series can keep this momentum going and actually manage to stick the landing, I think we might have yet another Chip Zdarsky classic. Overall, I think I'd feel comfortable giving this one a very positive 9 out of 10. Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched at the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quest. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.